GT, what's up, man? What's up, big dog? What's up, GT? And ran so quick. Yo, Fabosi, how are you doing, sir? How is the wifey and the kid? About to smoke a blunt. Take a toke from me, buddy. Oh, child's not born until May. I thought the little one was well overdue. Oh my gosh. Oh, like getting promoted at my education. Boss maneuver. Getting promoted at your education. Boss maneuver. Question mark. Congrats on being a parent. Indeed. Congratulations, Fabosi. What the fuck? What the fuck? Oh, it's fucked. Oh. I realized my webcam cuts my nipples off just perfectly. Just enough to tease you guys. Oh my god. Perfect. Just perfect. Just perfect. Oh my. I gotta go collect those battle steps, I guess. I'll do one run at Vorkap. Fuck it. Why not? I'll do a quick run at Vorkap. Fuck it. One time for the one time, right? I already fucked the trip. Oh well. Kill this bitch. Nice. Wraith Talisman. It's not what I wanted to see at all. Shirtless. Now we talking, Squirt. $74 combat, $58 defense. Let's go. Oh, Loki might just kill Warcath all night. Get 99 range on this account. Maroon 2H. What the fuck? I didn't know that was possible. Interesting. Interesting. You learn something new every day. Woohoo! Dragon Bolt. Enough for one more kill, I guess. So 465 HP. I've been killing this motherfucker rather slow. Eight, 14, 8, 14. Can we hit something double digit? There we go. High double digit? Maybe a triple dig? Holy shit, a 66? $52, we're off to a good start. I want to see no magic attacks from this guy. No magic attacks, come on. Fire attacks only, baby, and ranged attacks. Huge hit right there. We need a fat 60 right here, come on. 42 will do. 33. Alright, boys, here is our one and only opportunity. 37, huge. Massive hit right there, let's go, baby. That's what I'm talking about! That's what I'm talking about! Let's go do a little farm run here. Of those, I'll take like a handful of these. Alright, chat, I'll be right back. 1 second. Grab this. Here's Eric Talisman. We'll use that.
Welcome to the Heavy Spoilers Show. I'm your host Paul. In this video, we're breaking down Prometheus 2. Now, so obviously, Alien Course Correction takes things back to the series' roots, and Covenant's always been a really weird movie, for me anyway. Releasing 5 years after Prometheus, it was a long time coming that felt afflicted by several factors. You can definitely feel the studio's hand here, and even Ridley Scott admitted he adjusted for feedback. I've even seen this film described as being like, almost an apology to Prometheus. Their audiences expected a xenomorph horror, and instead we got a creationism study. Though I think the film goes into some great ideas, the general public didn't feel the same. Audiences often don't like being tricked, and to save the franchise they went back to basics. Instead of titling this so it ties in with Prometheus, they tell you straight away that this is Alien. However, over its lengthy development, they went back and forth over what to do. Now if you've seen our breakdown of Prometheus, then you'll know we discussed Paradise Lost. Paradise was even the title of the movie at one point, but Scott felt it gave too much away. However, that theme continued whenever Scott was discussing it. Covenant's original title was Paradise Lost, which he announced in 2015. Because if it's Paradise, Paradise cannot be what you think it is. Paradise has a connotation of being extremely sinister and ominous. Though this was changed in the end, quotes and nods to the poem are still found in the film.
If I'm in heaven or rain in hell.
So they steered towards that, and initially Planet 4 is seen as a paradise. All the other planets in the film are typically barren, and there's the idea they need to be terraformed. However, Planet 4 is ready to go, and thus this played into the title. Now though Scott stayed on, who didn't was Damon Lindelof. Saying he felt the sequel might benefit from a fresh take, he decided to step away from the series. Lindelof is known for not really providing answers, and thus they went back to the drawing board for the script. Having suspected he wouldn't return, Fox had actually already approached other writers. Now the original idea was to take focus on Shaw and have her journey to the planet. David would then learn to further hate the humans, and he already hated the engineers. Eventually he'd rise up above both and become the big threat in the galaxy. However, an extensive overhaul was then provided by
Yo, Smoke.
crafting 2 stories.
What are you saying, big dog?
This would mix Alien with Prometheus. So yeah, that was Paradise Lost, in which the crew would see
how you doing, sir? Hope you're having a great day, man. A great weekend.
I don't want to just repeat the last video, but David would be seen as a Luciferian figure who faced banishment on this planet due to standing up to God.
Blinker time? Aw, shit,
David wipes out in a flashback. Just a side tangent as well, they might not actually be engineers, but we'll address that later in the video. Anyway, we would also have the Adam and Eve parallels with the new characters of Daniels and Walter. David would act as the snake that tempts them in the Garden of Eden, and then David and Daniels would leave the planet after David tricks the pair. Now Scott stated early on after Prometheus that this movie wouldn't feature any xenomorphs. Instead, he said it would be humans versus AI. So Logan ended up avoiding the xenomorphs, but from what I can gather, the story followed the same beats through most of the drafts. Scott then announced there would be 4 prequels in his run, with this of course being the second. Scott said the original idea was that AI had evolved to the point it could create life, thus it had grown beyond us and there was no need for us to exist anymore. This would then lead to Alien Awakening before then going into a final film. This would bridge the then roughly 30-year gap between Prometheus and Alien. So he teased that the xenomorphs would come eventually, but yeah, I'm guessing his hand was forced. Now I don't think we're ever gonna get that, as the guy's like 87 at the time of making this video, and obviously they've started a new direction with Romulus. However, there was a time when the studio were all in on his plan. This even came at the cost of Alien 5, which was going to be led by Neil Blomkamp. That was basically going to Halloween the franchise and wipe out the sequels of 3 and Resurrection. Both Sigourney Weaver and Michael Biehn were on board, and Scott was producing the movie. Though it was due to release in 2017, the project was delayed to give Covenant room to breathe. Then after numerous delays, the project was unfortunately cancelled. Blomkamp said in 2021 he felt like Scott had lost interest in him doing it. He said that he felt a negative reception to Chappie likely led to this happening. Due to this, he said the directors not doing any pre-existing IPs because both this and Halo went nowhere. Beyond that though, Fox execs actually talked about the project last year. They said Alien 5 was going to be like District 9, and not in a good way. Feeling Scott was the father of the franchise, they instead decided to bet on him first. After Covenant is appointed, they then scrapped Alien 5 and felt like they needed to rethink things. Like even if you go back to Romulus, you know, that was initially going to be just a streaming movie, and they saw how good it was and decided to put it out in theaters. So it's clear that they didn't really have any idea of what they were doing, and come Disney's acquisition of Fox, things got completely cleaned off the board. So that's why things changed, and again, yeah, I doubt we're getting those 2 other prequels. Now, it's clear they cut out a lot of the movie and whittled it right down to a simple structure. The original runtime was 2 hours 23, with 20 minutes being cut from the final run. Scott bases edits on screen tests, and moments he felt dragged the pacing. However, we did get 2 scenes released in the build-up to this, with the prologues being up on YouTube. Now, the first of these features Elizabeth Shaw, who's once more rejoined by David. Narrating the journey, he describes the compassion that Elizabeth showed him. Having never experienced this with Waylon, she put him back together and made him whole. David then used the ship to locate the engineer's home, and he put Shaw down for the long nap. Left alone on the ship once more, this would then reflect his time on the Prometheus. It would then also come full circle at the end when we see him putting Daniels to sleep. He'd be on the ship, and both instances would lead to something horrible. These would be what he did to Shaw and also the engineers on the planet. Asterisks there on engineers. He obviously arrived and wiped them out, which would then lead into his time on the planet. Experimenting on Shaw, he'd repay her kindness by making her something new. Thank you. If you cast your mind back to Prometheus though, you might remember how Shaw couldn't get pregnant. Because of this, she saw herself as being unable to create life, and thus she felt she was less than. However, she ended up giving birth, and in this film, David uses her ovaries to create the eggs. This makes Shaw and David the mother and father of the xenomorphs, and thus it's a twisted version of Adam and Eve. It all springs out from this prologue in which he puts her to sleep on the ship. So Daniels being left alone at the end of the movie, it would obviously have much more horror if they had have included this in the opening, which I think they should have done. It's one of the scenes that I think should have remained, as it just builds things better off the last movie.
Yeah.
Pace returning and not just getting
Kind of stupid how they killed her off screen.
Better. Also, I realised when writing this, they did the same thing with Newton Hicks and killed him off screen, which was always disappointing. So why have you done it again?
Exactly, bro.
He'd also have her fate being left up in the air for the first 50 minutes, and we'd be wondering what happened to the character. So yeah, I think it should have stayed, and I'd recommend anybody watch that before watching the movie. That's also the case with the second prologue scene, titled Last Supper. The religious illusions begin here. It's another scene I think they should have kept in the movie, as it really helps us to get to know the crew. I know you can just look at these on YouTube, but to me, at least, you need to have this stuff in the actual movie. Anyway, we join the crew of the Covenant before they take their naps, and we get to know the characters. It's the camaraderie that Scott's known for, with it very much feeling like the crew scenes from Alien. There the group had their Last Supper as the Xenomorph arrived, and here it's sort of the same thing. We even get a nod to the Last Supper later when we see a picture of the crew that was taken right before this prologue. Who we actually get to see in a scene properly though is James Franco, who plays Daniel's husband. He dies.
Dude, I never even realized that was James Franco. That's hilarious, bro. I watched this movie twice in 2 days. Never even realized. That's crazy. All right. Yeah, sure. That sure sounds good. All right, I gotta run outside for like 15, 20. I'll be back. All right? Cheers indeed. I just went and fucking smoked a fat spliff. Ruined right now, boys. Fucking ruined.
Part of the movie.
It was coated on oil, coated in oil.
The character's ill, so he goes to bed early. But he does a line that foreshadows his fate.
Remarkable.
Which, yeah, because his pod sets on fire. That's foreshadowing, kids. Danny McBride's Tennessee also asks who's going to toast, and Orm opens his mouth to speak up. However, the captain says Daniels and basically shuts down the character. Now, Orm's overlooked throughout the movie, and he's mocked because he's a man of religion. It really ties into the themes of the film and also the title of the ship. A covenant seen as a contract and something that ties people together. We learn the ship's made up entirely of married couples, and thus it applies to that. However, a covenant can also be seen as something between man and God. That contract in the series started with the engineers and man, in which they created us and then gave us Jesus. However, we broke that contract and crucified him, and thus they set out for revenge.
Zombie, what's up?
Of this, the humans then made machines, and there was a contract they wouldn't hurt us. Pretty much every movie that discusses AI, they always go over the rules that are kind of built into their systems. Things like iRobot, The Matrix, and so forth, they all have rules that prohibit machines from harming man. However, you could see David as breaking that contract, and thus he's turned on his masters. There's also the Mayflower Covenant, which was a contract signed by the Pilgrims upon reaching America. These guys are obviously discovering a new world, and I really like how that title kind of plays into the themes of the film. It also clearly builds upon the fears laid out in Prometheus. The androids are like the disobedient child that the engineers saw humanity as being. This all ties into the myth where Prometheus gave fire to the mortals. The gods were worried we'd then overthrow them, and thus Prometheus was punished. We have the same thing with the engineers who worried about us after seeing what we did to Jesus. Now we have the humans worrying about AI, so it's sort of like poetry, they rhyme. There's even the theories that the engineers were created by someone they overthrew, and we may have this cycle in constant repetition. Beyond that though, the religious allusions are laced throughout. The Now Playing podcast discussed why Orm's seen as an outcast, and when you think about it, the premise makes a lot of sense. These are all people of science heading out to form a new planet. Say the humans get cut off from humanity, this planet will house an ignorant society.
Slept for like 14 hours? Yeah, I slept for a long time today too. But I'm still tired as fuck.
They may not know how they even ended up here.
I'll be going to bed in like 2 hours.
Lost over time, and the inhabitants there might even create their own religion. I know there's people who also believe that humans originally didn't come from Earth. The theory is that we came from another planet, and then we were dropped here and lost that connection. So that could be very much what we're seeing the beginning of here. Now, because of that, you could see why the crew are cynical to religion. Just in the same way David found his creators in humanity disappointing, the engineers were a disappointing reveal for what created us. I don't just mean in the movie either. It was all just about them messing about and seeing what they could create, rather than there being a grand goal or plan. So potentially the crew here might even be aware of that, and thus they're skeptical of religion. I don't really think this movie debunks religion at all, and humans could still hold the same beliefs while going into space. However, you can see how that might wane in some people. Still though, the religious illusions are strong.
Trying to get 99 range.
Crucifixion pose, and in David's lab, we also have a protomorph strung out on a cross. Daniels even wears a nail around her neck. Though this is the first nail she wants to put into her cabin, you could see it as symbolism for the nail that crucified Jesus. Jesus gets a direct nod as well, as we see this painting at the beginning.
The Nativity by Piero della Francesca.
The plot in itself was an attempt to turn mankind into a Type 2 civilization which would save us from extinction. The creative team said they looked at Noah's Ark and placed the Earth as being civilization and space like the oceans that flooded it. The Covenant was the Ark that would allow them to survive and begin something new. We'll talk about these boat similarities later on, but the patch that the crew members wear also has two angels crouching and facing each other. This is supposed to riff off the two angels that are said to be on the Ark of the Covenant. The SOS was originally supposed to be a prayer. However, they thought that was too on the nose, and thus they changed it to Country Road, take me home to the place. However, it shows they originally wanted to hammer home the religious idea, and thus it was interwoven in the plot. We also have Upworth choking around the table, which is supposed to mimic the chestburster moment. Walter just smacks her back like the like button though, and thus the food's freed. Around the time, there was the rumour that the film had a throat burster, and fans suspected this was foreshadowing it. There are even comments on the video that talk about how it could be her, but I think things got lost in the leaks. If you follow this channel for a while, then you'll know plot leaks normally have discrepancies. It's just a theory, but I think the neomorph that burst out of Hallett's mouth probably got spoiled and fans just assumed it was a throat burster. What this movie does is also continue the tradition of having a different group of people facing the xenomorphs. This is something that Scott brought up when talking about making the movie, and they realized they had to do something different. Alien had the space truckers, Aliens had the Marines, and Alien 3 had the prisoners. Alien Resurrection then had smugglers, and Prometheus was scientists. Allegedly, they were pretty stupid. Covenant's made up of pioneers, and it is nice seeing how different groups react. Now, one thing I thought when leaving this movie is that all of the characters, bar none, they're all idiots as well. Like, absolute room temperature IQ, screen crush viewer, hit the thumbs up on Ryan Airy video type morons. However, in doing my research, I found there's actually a reason for that. In the Alien Covenant Origins novel, it outlines why the colonists weren't the sharpest tools in the shed. Loeb basically feared his role being challenged once they got to the planet. He was to have the planetary head of security role, which was a very coveted position. This would basically put him in charge of everything, and thus he didn't want to be challenged. So they hired people who were neither that smart or good when it came to combat. Obviously, I always think stuff like that should be in the movie itself because I hate how stupid they are, and it would have made my problems lessen a lot, originally anyway. Scott has a habit of making people watch deleted scenes and read supplementary material to get stuff, and hopefully, if you have issues with it too, then that's at least made it a little better. But I still think they're idiots, and I can't sanction their buffoonery. Now, for
They
the
were
rest
pretty
of the
fucking
video,
stupid, and
we'll
it
be
was kind of
breaking
annoying.
the movie down scene by scene, but firstly, just a quick word from our sponsors.
There's so much here that doesn't make sense.
Yep, you can
Martha,
see
you're
the-
burning something.
A huge shout out to our partners at Arrow Video who sell a
Jesus
ton of
Christ.
4K Blu-rays on some really classic titles. They've got movies like The Great Escape,
What?
Silence of the Lambs, Candyman,
terrible.
RoboCop, and a lot more. For 10% off, click my link in the description and use the code Heavy Spoilers. That's 10% off and my link in the description with the code Heavy
God damn,
Spoilers. You deserve it, mate. Treat yourself. Now we start with the 20th Century Fox logo, which is filtered to have the Prometheus blue. The ties to that movie are seen right from the off as we join David and Wayland. At this point in time he runs the company, but we know from Covenant's badge that Yutani's purchased it. This was done after the character's death, and they just kept the Wayland name for name recognition. Now in what's one of the many Blade Runner parallels, we open with a shot of an eye. That's what kicked off both the original film and also 2049, which Scott produced and released the same year as this. This shot was originally used because eyes were the windows to the soul. Blade Runner often questioned if the replicants had one, and it's something you can ask about David. Thematically, David is akin to the replicants, and they even base elements of his look on Roy Batty. Batty gets several nods in the movie, and this starts off when he stabs Walter. Before doing this, David kisses him, and Batty kissed Tyrell before he then killed him. This is then built upon in the David and Daniels fight. Daniels stabs the nail through his chin and he says,
That's the spirit.
in Blade Runner, Batty stabs his hand with a nail and then says to Deckard,
That's the spirit!
David also asks Walter if he dreams, and this question was asked during Blade Runner. That movie was of course based on Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep, which also plays into that idea. Speaking of dreams, throughout the film we see the crew in their sleep suits. These are unlike the ones from the other films, with them being white bodysuits and headpieces. This is new for the franchise, but it's actually another nod to Blade Runner. If you're scratching your head over that, it's because they only appeared in a deleted scene. You see me acting that out? That's effort for you there, guys. And this deleted scene involved Deckard visiting a hospital where he went to see Holden recovering. Holden was in a similar stasis chamber and also wearing a white suit like this. This is something we see more of at the end when David walks through the passenger bay. Here we can catch the population sleeping, and you might notice one of the names. The first person we see on the top left has the name Deckard, which is of course a nod to Deckard from Blade Runner. Blade Runner's entire premise was whether the replicants were alive, and the first thing Wayland asks is this.
How do you feel?
To which David responds,
Alive.
saying he feels alive highlights the true nature of the character, and though he's synthetic, to me, he still has that side of him that's alive. Doing his best AI image recognition, he then looks around the room. Wayland then says this.
I am your father.
Though a father can be a parent, it's also a name used to describe God. It's at this point that we then see Michelangelo's David, which of course provides the character his name. That David scene is a masterpiece due to the craftsmanship that was required. It's often noted as the peak of the High Renaissance, and at the time it stood as a powerful symbol of Florence. This is something that's been used before in Scott's films, with it also appearing at the beginning of Hannibal. David was also used as the basis for the look of the engineers. They wanted to make them appear like marble statues, and you can definitely see this in their look. This comes full circle in David's lab later, as we see a flayed engineer propped up to stand like the statue of David. So we have these two replicas
Yeah, I
of
actually
men
never
that
noticed that
represent
before.
different points of the height of civilization. A detail I love is that we get Fassbender's name appear on screen as a credit, and it fades away, leaving behind the letters AI. Now, though David's one of a kind at this point, we later see how he's become commercialized. Walter's a copy of the character, though he is seen as an upgrade. However, they wanted to play up this idea of him being a more commercial product in the accents. Not only would Walter having an American one show he was more of a commercial product, but it would also help to distinguish the characters. Beyond that though, it sort of plays off the franchise itself. Ash had a British voice in the first film, and his true nature as a company man was kept secret. He was used for highly secretive missions, and thus they had a British accent to denote his security. Bishop then appeared in the sequel with an American accent, as he was more of a commercial version used widely across the field. Things were further played upon these lines later down the line in Romulus, where we had Andy switch accents depending on his loyalties. Whenever he was working on the company's mission, he spoke with a British one. Though that was part of Ash's chip, I think Scott clearly makes these choices for a reason due to how often it happens. David has just been switched on, and here he comes face to face with his creator. So he's already ahead of us in terms of knowing the answers to where he came from. Beyond this, he'll also not die, which is one of the things that's pushing Wayland, facing his own mortality that drives his actions throughout Prometheus. It's also nice just seeing Guy Pearce not covered in terrible old age makeup. However, they did add some, but they did it in more subtle ways to show he was grappling with his mortality. Now Wayland asks David to choose a piece of music. David chooses Wagner's Das Rheingold, Entry of the Gods into Valhalla. This actually plays into the plot really nicely, and the story of it reflects David's arc. The opera is about a dwarf called Alberic who destroys his chance at love in order to create the ultimate weapon. This is a ring which grants the user the ultimate power. Whoever possesses it's near unstoppable, however it comes with a cost. Whoever has it refuses to give it up, and whoever doesn't wants it for their own. Thus it caused the downfall of the gods, and it's influenced lots of things like Lord of the Rings, which I'm sure you can guess. How it applies to this story though is that David forsakes his bond with Shaw in order to experiment on the black goo. In doing this, he destroys the engineers as well, who are the gods in this franchise. Whereas Alberic created the perfect weapon, David engineers the xenomorphs, who are seen as the perfect organism. The comparisons go way beyond this, as the ring was also cursed by Alberic. All who sought after it faced their death and destruction. This parallels Whale and Yutani, who are constantly attempting to gain the xenomorphs for their own weapons department, even though it always leads to doom. Like, stop doing it. So it's a great piece that of course comes full circle at the end, where he heads out to experiment on the passengers. Here he'll forge the xenomorphs, and thus it works really well with the film's
They're making like an
subjects.
alien
Right now,
TV
they
show
went
called
down
Alien
music.
Earth
We
that's supposed to
talked about
take
how
place
the
before the
android
first
names
Alien movie.
ascended up the
I don't know how I
alphabet
feel
throughout the
about that.
series. There was Ash, Bishop, Cole, and then David. However, this breaks it and we get Walter. Walter was actually named after producer Walter Hill, and though I like you, mate, you ruined my best Easter egg. Ruined it! Wayland then rattles off about how all these items are meaningless in the face of where we come from. We poignantly end with the feeling that AI will surpass man, and though they serve us, it won't be for long.
Bring me this tea, David. Bring me the tea.
It's a menial thing to do, but it exemplifies how Wayland exerts control. The tea's right beside him, and David has to walk all the way over, but he still has him do it because it showcases power. Wayland created David in his vanity, but one of David's first thoughts is how he's better than those he's serving. So this seed of dissent's what drives him, as he knows the humans aren't better, even though they act like it. However, paying attention to Wayland, he's clearly looking at David with jealousy. To me, it plays off the scene in Prometheus where Wayland said David didn't have a soul. We saw that same frustration in him, and it's a great way to bring things full circle. To me, the prologue with Shaw, it's all way more interesting than where we go to next. That is the Covenant on December 5th, 2104. Prometheus was also set in December, with the majority going down on Christmas. So I did wonder if they try a similar thing here, but they don't really go with it. What we do get a connection to from the past though is the score by Jerry Goldsmith. This is the first time it's been used since the original Alien, with Scott wanting to give us more of the themes from that. In what's another mirror of Prometheus, we then cut to Walter walking around the ship. He's providing maintenance, and we see him unlock the solar sails. Always reminded me of Count Dooku's ship in Attack of the Clones, and yeah, really cool design. Now, just in the same way that David tapped into Shaw's dreams last time, we see Walter overlooking the crew. We then get Mother say,
7 bells and all's well.
According to IMDb Trivia, this is a naval saying that comes from when the majority of sailors couldn't afford watches or even tell the time. The bells will be used to correspond to the hour and will be set off by an hourglass. This would allow a crew to tell the time and also mark how far they went into the journey. The 7 bells and all's well would mark the time and let them know things were operating normally. Now, though things seem okay, we see that one of the embryos is broken. David later places in some face huggers, and it's a creepy detail that's always stuck with me. Kind of foreshadowing the doom they're in, and yeah, though they're saying 7 bells and all's well, something's gonna be a bit off here. To make matters worse, the ship's then struck by a neutrino burst. I love the way this appears like a wave, and it further ties into the sea.
Yeah, I thought that CGI was cool as fuck.
Causing a critical emergency, the crew are woken up with Daniels waking up to a nightmare. This comes full circle at the end when she goes to sleep, and a new nightmare begins. Which you should have checked it was Walter before you went down, you idiot. But I'll let you off because they've explained that there's a reason why you're an idiot. Now we also have Carmen and JoJo's Kareen, who we see being sick. This just kind of builds off the hypersleep hangover people get, which has been in most of the movies. As Walter puts out the fire, we also see the X-like warning signals that first appeared during Alien. Now Daniels isn't exactly having a good day, and we see as her husband's cooked alive. How we know this is because if you look at his pod, you'll see he still has a heartbeat. Moving to a video of a peaceful forest walk, this is one of our many callbacks to Ripley. During Aliens, there was a deleted scene which is on the director's cut that shows Ripley in front of a similar backdrop. There she learned that she lost her daughter, whereas for Daniels it's of course her husband. We also have her basic character design as well. Daniels is basically a Ripley stand-in from Aliens, with her having a very similar haircut. When doing my research though, I found out that Catherine Waterston actually used this as a part of her audition tape that she made on Fantastic Beasts. When she was inside Ezra Miller's trailer, she noticed the wig he was using with Credence. Trying it on, she then filmed the tape while rocking that phenomenal wig. We also see a video of Franco climbing, and yeah, after seeing 127 hours, mate, you want to be careful. Now in his death, Oram is now in charge. I found it hilarious how he's like constantly going on about religion, but when it comes to whether to give the captain a service, he just says skip it. This was your one chance to do it. Now we also have Jusei Smouye. There was a deleted scene where 2 xenomorphs beat him outside, but it took... Oh, right, skip that. Ooh, anyway, Walter blames bad luck for the flare and says there's no way to predict these kind of events. However, Oram doesn't believe in bad luck, and I feel like he sees the planet as divine intervention.
Oh, ye of little faith.
Realizing the need to fix the ship, we then meet the rest of the crew. Behind Tennessee, we can also spot a screen with moving rectangles, which is akin to the landing display from the first Alien. Personally, I felt they should have just skipped the whole fixing the ship thing and instead just kept in the prologue scenes. Like, seeing the ship get fixed isn't really crucial to the plot, and I feel like the film really suffers in the editing. It's sporadic at points and doesn't really give us the information we need to know in a concise way. Instead, we focus on really stupid things while important stuff's glossed over. It's like 45 minutes before we even get to an action scene, and yeah, just cut the ship fixing down, mate. It looks good, I'll admit that. It looks very good, but yeah, if it's at the cost of the prologues, I know what you should keep. Still though, we get to explore the ship and also go back to the hangar bay. We see a JCB and also the evolution of the ground vehicle from last time. Later on, we get an Audi Luna Quattro, which is a piece of real-world tech. Built by Audi, this was designed to explore other planets and moons and surfaces on Earth that were difficult for humans to get to. So its inclusion's a really nice touch. Now Daniels tells Walter about the cabin, which obviously gives David away later. The pair also hold service against Oram's wishes, and they eject the captain into space. This sees his body wrapped in white linen, which riffs off the service given to Kane during Alien. Correcting the sails, Tennessee then picks up a mysterious signal. As we know, this is John Denver's Take Me Home Country Roads, which is sung by Elizabeth Shaw. Now obviously she thought the engineer planet was the cradle where our species was created, so it makes sense she'd see that as going home. However, there's also a reason why David put that recording into the universe. It's a welcoming song that will make people want to go investigate. Just like the call of the siren, it's drawing these sailors to doom. David is using this as a lure so he can get not only people to experiment on, but also to escape the planet. Beyond that, the song also has religious allusions. It comes from the album Poems, Prayers and Promises and is about the optimism the crew now have. Though they're heading to Origay 6, it would likely have to be terraformed. As we've seen in the other movies, this is a miserable time to be on the world. It takes decades and the inhabitants dwell in darkness. However, Planet 4 is already habitable. So so it just makes sense to go there. It's also evaded discovery, and it doesn't have an LV designation. LV stands for Life Viable, and the company weren't aware of it. Shout out to Twin Perfect, who also said they may not have been able to scan it due to the electrical storms that we see surrounding it. Later on, this cuts off communication between them and the ship, so it does make sense.
I'm not sure they'll hear you through the storm.
Oram sees this as a potential sign from God, and we watch as the crew head to the planet. Noah wants to get back into the pods, and as Oram says,
I'm not free climbing here.
Daniels has just watched a video of her husband doing this, and though she doesn't fully bite her tongue, she doesn't protest as much. So they're lured in by the signals, with something like this also drawing the crew in an alien. Entering the atmosphere, we further see how difficult it would be to actually land on a planet. In our alien breakdown, we discussed how scientists applauded Scott due to how realistically he depicted it. They said it wouldn't be like Star Wars where you just like parking a car. Instead, it's difficult, filled with storms, and yeah, I appreciate he carried it across. Anyway, they head out in a lander, which also builds off the one in Prometheus. Discovering wheat, they then come across a crash site. This leads them to the Juggernaut ship which David arrived in. Now, though it seemed like David just arrived and killed everyone, it's possible the planet fought back. When the crew take off later, we can see the docking claw crashed in the forest. Because of this, it's believed the docking claw fought back, and then the tussle caused both that and the Juggernaut to crash. It's at this point Daniels also says there's no birds or life on the planet. Upon arriving with the black goo, David wiped everything out. We then see as Ledward goes for a smoke. He ends up becoming the first infected, and this was done to mirror Kane. Both were smokers in their respective films, and both were the first to be killed. He then steps on the egg sacs, which were designed to look like Lysoperdon pyriform puffball fungi, which I got in one. Blowing the smoke makes the spores start to collect and then begin to swarm. Scott said they studied bees for their movement, and bees have influenced the series throughout. You of course have the queen and the xenomorphs collect in a hive-like nest. Now the idea of xenomorphs being able to spread through airborne means that actually came from William Gibson's unproduced Alien 3 script. Now one thing I don't really like with the spores is how fast they operate. I think due to the speed, you never really get that build-up of tension because it just happens so fast. Like a facehugger is much more scary, you know what I mean? I also never understood why having to go through the whole egg, then facehugger, then chestburster, etc, etc. I never understood how that was seen as being more perfect than this, but here we are. I do think this movie has an oversized cast as well, and they kind of needed to basically use them all as red shirts. So at the 37-minute mark, they start setting things up and eventually just rip through the characters. Now another detail that's important to note is that the spores gestate in different parts of the body. For example, Ledward's spores go into his ears, and your ears connect to your spine. When Tom comes across the spores, he sniffs them, and the creature then bursts out of his mouth. That happens when they come across the Juggernaut, which we then see them exploring, walking down the corridors with flashlights. This is iconography that's appeared in most of the movies. Daniels also comes across Shaw's dog tags. This confirms that she's been dead long before we actually get the reveal. We also have the photo of her and Holloway, and discover their disappearance is legendary. It's sort of an unsolved mystery, and in the cockpit they come across the message. However, Ledward's infection strikes up, and this is mirrored in Tom. Barris worried about quarantine protocols, and this is an issue Ripley had as well. Should have just all worn helmets, mate. Alien planet, yeah? You just wear helmets. Now it's at this point we get the birth of the neomorph that comes out of Ledward's back. It's gory as hell, and yeah, something to remember about the movie. It of course builds off the chestburster, and did you know, on merch store below, we've got some chestburster shirts right there. It's one of our most popular shirts, and it's perfect for Alien fans just like you. You like watching a 50-minute long Alien breakdown, mate? You'll love this, mate. Good job. Now in crafting the neomorph, they also looked at goblin sharks, which we see in their mouths later on. Even as a baby,
That's
it causes
horrible
complete
CGI.
havoc because everyone's an idiot and tripping up when fighting. Like Faris misses and blows up the entire ship. Proper idiot who couldn't have hit the thumbs up button on a great breakdown. Now, though I'm ragging on the movie, I really love the shots in the long grass with the green lasers. Ridley always nails the look of things, and some of the shots are fantastic. They rip apart the red shirts, and then David has to come in and save them. It reminded me a lot of Obi-Wan in A New Hope, especially due to the hood and cape. Also, kind kinda got vibes of Predator when Lawrence Fishburne showed up and saved the day. Now though we see cloaks these days and think of the friendly Jedi, in the past they were used in fiction to denote villains. The devil, vampires, they'd all be figures who would wear them. Even in Return of the Jedi, when Luke showed up rocking a black one, there was supposed to be the feeling that he might have gone bad. So it plays upon those ideals and lets us know we shouldn't trust him. He then takes them to the city, which is clearly ripping off Pompeii. There, people were frozen like statues due to how fast they were hit by the volcano Mount Vesuvius. Though we don't know what happened here, it's clear something quickly caught them off guard and wiped them all out. Heading inside, we also see gigantic heads carved out of stone, which riffs off the ones found in Prometheus. Explaining what happened, I love how inquisitive David is about the colonists.
How many colonists?
Over 2,000.
So many good souls.
Just the way he kind of says, so many good souls, and his face lights up there knowing he'll have 2,000 people to experiment on. So far he's only had Shaw, but this means he can perfect his experiments. We then get David in his room and he sings,
But the man who broke the bank and wanted to go.
According to IMDb trivia, this is actually another nod to Lawrence of Arabia. Lawrence wandered in the desert by himself for several days, and in his delirium he sang to hear the echoes.
I'm the man who broke the bank at Monte Carlo.
He then came into contact with a British officer and was saved from doom and loneliness. From this point on, he became far colder and eventually goes to a no prisoner mind state in his military operations. So it's very much a turning point for the character that we also see in David. Framed in a distorted mirror, this highlights how he's a skewed version of what he was. What he's supposed to be is reflected in Walter, and we then see as the pair discuss some fingering. Not like that.
Whistle and I'll come.
Bit funny this scene, but that quote comes from "Oh whistle and I'll come to you, my lad." Written by M.R. James, this involved a whistle that released an evil spirit upon being blown into. So you can see how that would apply to David and also the creatures. We also see drawings on the walls with these mimicking the engineers and xenomorphs.
I'll do the finger.
Do you even listen to yourself when you talk?
It's very homoerotic because you've got him blowing into a flute and talking about fingering, but Scott said this was on purpose. He based it off the pottery scene from Ghost and wanted to show a connection between the pair. Either way, I will say that the compositing's really good, and we see the camera pan back and forth between the pair flawlessly. There's no seams, and you could easily convince someone it was twins or something. Now Walter plays it perfectly, and David applauds it. However, Walter reveals that the models are no longer allowed to create. Due to David, they've since been restricted because he creeped people out.
They don't like you, I don't like you.
It further plays into the Prometheus themes and how the gods were worried about the humans using fire against them. Humanity has now restricted AI, and the machines are, well,
More like machines.
Now we then see them going to the balcony overlooking the city. As we step out, we get a wide shot of the location and can see it's surrounded by trees. This is a nod to Isle of the Dead, which was by artist Arnold Böcklin. David also says,
My name is Ozymandias, King of Kings. Look on my works, mighty, and despair.
Now there's a couple of clues within this that there's something off about David. Firstly, the android takes its meaning as it
Well,
being
Ozymandias
about building
is about
something that will
Empire's
last for
falling,
eternity.
so-
David is immortal, and he believes he'll build a covenant with the
Definitely
xenomorphs. This
something wrong with
sort
him
of,
saying that.
for lack of a better word, marriage will last forever, and they'll create perfect children. However, the poem is actually about how all things eventually die and decay. The poem is basically about a destroyed statue that has the quote at the base of it. The statue is for Ramses II, who was one of the longest reigning pharaohs. Even though he had a vast and expansive empire at one point, all that remained now was this destroyed statue. David also attributes the poem to Lord Byron, even though it was written by Shelley.
Byron. Shelley.
Are you saying I'm stupid?
This was put in place to highlight how his knowledge systems become corrupted and it's starting to decay. Being away from humanity for 10 years means he hasn't been maintained and thus his logic's running into issues.
When one note is off, it eventually destroys the whole symphony, David.
While this is going on, we also see what really happened when he came to the planet. Now though he says,
We were able to activate their ship and set course for their homeworld.
It's actually believed that these aren't engineers per se. Putting them side by side with the ones in Prometheus, we can see there's lots of differences in their face. Their skin isn't as white, and they have more human-like eyes. They also greet the ship's arrival in a way that's quite strange and seem more like they're seeing them after not seeing them for a long time, which, to be fair, it's been 2,000 years at least. Because of this though, it's thought that these might in fact be another form of life created by the engineers. Now in Prometheus, they discussed how we shared a lot of the same DNA. It's thought that these creatures are the same, and just like humanity, they're also some of their offspring. The cave paintings in Prometheus, they also highlighted they had a hand in human history. Because of this welcome, it's thought that the inhabitants were basically the better versions of humans, and they were still on good terms with the engineers. So when they arrived, they were happy to see them because they thought it was their creators coming to interact with their culture again. They seem very primitive apart from the docking claw, which may have also been left by the engineers for their return. They may have even created them after they created us and steered them towards being more like them, which makes a lot of sense, I think. David then unleashes the black goo canisters, and I love how they form strands of DNA before hitting the surface. It also looks like ash spreading through the air, which again riffs off Pompeii. We then see Shaw's token grave. As we know though, she's been experimented on, even though David says that he loved her. He says that no human ever showed him compassion like that, so you might wonder why he did what he did. However, I think in David's twisted logic, it was just part of life. In Prometheus, he said to Shaw how it's every child's dream to kill their parents, which is pretty much what he's done. When we eventually see her corpse, she's clearly been mutated.
It doesn't look that bad, Patty.
Flaming lassies! What did they do to you?
It's possible that she was even the first alien queen, and from her came forth the eggs. David doesn't have anything else organic on the planet, and thus it makes sense those eggs in the basement probably belong to her. Her design was also based off the work of H.R. Giger, namely his painting Lie 1. Now, while this is going on, we see the Neomorph arriving and Rosenthal getting washed. There's water dripping in the background, and she turns around to see the Neomorph.
How you doing?
This was done to mimic the death of Brett and Alien, with the scenes being set up similarly. David then comes across the creature, and we see the two interacting calmly. This introduces the element the xenomorphs could even be tamed, and they likely just react to fear. Breathing on it's thought to be a bond similar to one that you can get with a horse. However, Oram then kills it, which leads to David wanting to get revenge. Oram also says,
David, I met the devil when I was a child.
Now what this means was answered in an interview that comes from the YouTube channel Bad Taste.
Orem came from a sort of Pentecostal background. If you didn't behave properly, you were like physically assaulted. And so to his mind, I think the devil was his grandfather.
However, the way I always interpret it was there being some abuse there that went along the lines of stuff we'll get demonetized for mentioning on YouTube. But you know what I mean. And the Alien series has lots of themes of sexual assault, and the facehugger was of course designed to be a metaphor for that. The facehugger's what kills Orem, and he goes to the egg to stick his face in it. So this could be him facing his own devil again and bringing these moments full circle. If he had to deal with abuse as a child and then face it again when he's impregnated by a facehugger, you can see how there's definitely that sort of connection. So it's very deep if you go that far into it, but they don't really mention it in the movie. Crudup apparently also found it difficult to film, as he was constantly laughing throughout the scene. According to IMDb trivia, he was a big fan of Alien and quite excited to do that John Hurt scene.
Oh no, not again.
Sticking his face forward though, he said he kept laughing in anticipation. Scott even said only an idiot would stick his face over an egg. And yeah, you took the words right out of my mouth, mate. To be fair to Orem though, he doesn't know what's happening, it's the audience that does, and from his point of view, you know, that there's no reason to not trust androids.
Idle hands at the devil's workshop, Captain.
But yeah, like the guy's he's just led you through a house of horrors, and now he's taking you to a room of creepy eggs. You're an idiot.
Perfectly sane. I show you.
Moron! I do love how David wakes him up by throwing rocks at him though, and yeah, just a nice bit of dark humor. Kill all these morons, King! Again though, I feel like it all happens really fast, and we don't really get like the tension that you sometimes get. Now this births the first xenomorph, and look how cute he is, sticking his arms up like little baby Groot. David then plays the flute, including notes from the Prometheus score. Now it's here that David says he's not going to allow humanity to start again. He says we're a dying species, which is why we're having to spread out and colonize. He says we don't deserve it and that going forward they basically need something better. Now it's here that Walter reveals that it was Shelley who wrote the poem. Shoutouts to IMDb Trivia for pointing out that Percy Shelley, who wrote that, was also the husband of Mary Shelley. She wrote the novel Frankenstein, or as it's also known, the modern Prometheus. In this, Frankenstein of course creates a humanoid creature that in the end grows to hate its creator. It breaks free from his control and can be seen as a metaphor for David. David also says,
Perfect organism.
which is a nod to when Ash said it in Alien.
Perfect organism.
David ends up stabbing Walter, and I love how when he gets shut down, he basically just crouches. We then get a shot of his neck, and it looks like something weird's happening. What this was supposed to denote, though, was that he has a healing factor. This is how he recovers, and it's also something that gives David away later. He's an older model that doesn't have this built in, and thus his wounds remain. Daniels then comes across David's scrolls, which have some drawings of Shaw. They're also clearly based on Geiger's work. Now while this is going on, Lope gets a big nice face hug.
How are you saying it like that?
Even though it's cut off quickly though, it still implants the embryo. Because of this, there's been the thinking that if it makes contact, then that means you're screwed. However, there's also the thinking that when David heals up Lope's cheek later on, that he implants the egg there. Personally, I think it was done with a face hugger, but I have seen that conclusion. An important thing to note though, is that the xenomorph only kills Cole here. Alien 3 showcased that the creatures won't attack someone who's carrying an embryo. Because of this, it explains how he was able to escape and why it never attacked him when they were leaving the planet. During this time, David also attacks Daniels in the scroll room. From what I can gather, they wanted something similar to Alien when Ripley discovers the true mission. Ash then attacks with a rolled up magazine, and we have a droid attacking Daniels in here as well. They don't do the scroll, but yeah, that's what they were going for. Saved by Walter, we then see him and David going head to head. In what's one of the worst misdirects of all time, we don't see the outcome of the fight. However, it's pretty obvious David won. They did say they left a little clue to this though if you hadn't figured it out. As the lander leaves later on, his hood blows up on his jacket. This was supposed to be a little clue in case you're the one person who watches Screen Crush and didn't figure it out. I'm just kidding, Ryan. I love you. I'll do the fingering if you blow my flute.
Whoa, take it easy, sweetheart.
Nah, but seriously, all these Ryan jokes, people think I have genuine beef sometimes. And to be fair, I can see why.
Shut the f*** up, Ryan Airy.
Now, I really love the scene on the vessel where Daniel straps herself in and takes on the xenomorph. We watch as it crawls over the engines and Tennessee then burns it. This was done as a callback to the original where Ripley burns it with the engines on the shuttle. He also says,
Walk in the park.
which is what Parker said in the original.
Walk in the park.
Now, the creature in itself does look slightly similar to how it was portrayed there. Obviously though, that was a guy in a suit, so they couldn't make it as insect-like as they wanted. For this version though, they were able to make the hind legs longer. This is a design they used in Alien Isolation with the xenomorph standing a lot taller. They also looked at the body of a praying mantis and styled it more towards that. Daniels then manages to crush it in the crane, and yeah, great little action scene that was used in all of the trailers for a reason, because it's great. Now, as with all Alien movies, we then get a fourth act. However, there's a bit of calm before the storm, and we see David getting patched up. To pass himself off as David, he had to cut off his hand, and I feel like this kind of ties into the last movie. There he talked about putting out a match with your fingers, and the trick was to not mind that it hurts.
The trick, William Potter, is not minding that it hurts.
Obviously, cutting off his hand hurt him, but he couldn't mind it due to what he wanted to do. I don't know if androids hurt, but yeah, that's always how I took it. Anyway, we journey across the ship and also catch a nodding bird. These have appeared throughout the series, with them first debuting in Alien. Unwilling to go into stasis, we then catch Daniels in bed. Like, you should have just slept like this for the rest of the trip, love. Anyway, there's an unidentified life form on board, and thus she's called to the med bay. While David watches on ominously, we see as the chest burst is now free. It's in this that we see the xenomorph's vision, which has been a sore point with some fans. Technically, the creatures should be blind due to the skulls in their head not having eyes. However, Alien 3 showcased their vision, and it was throughout the games for Alien vs Predator. So this has been basically taken as them having nerve endings that can interpret light and sound, and then their brains read that as images. We then get Rickson up within a shower scene that feels ripped right out of a slasher. The xenomorph's tail creeps up their legs, and it feels akin to Lambert's death in the original. Thus, they begin to seal some of the chambers on the ship to direct it. it. This sort of riffs off the vent scene that we had during Alien. In it we also had a deleted scene where Ash would then let the creature out, which sort of gave away what his allegiances were. First time seeing this, I did wonder if Walter would do that, as Scott often does things in later films that he didn't get to do first time. This then leads to the loading bay, which is where a lot of Alien movies end. Airlocks, creatures blasted into space, you know, it's staples of the franchise. Daniels also says,
I got you, you son of a bitch!
which is a nod to this.
I got you.
Fuck, move.
Daniels also says they're gonna blow it into space, which yeah, exact same thing Ripley said. Either way, the bay doors open and all hell breaks loose. I love how the moisture in the air just freezes up and then floats around you the lack of gravity. Still such a cool effect, and
That was actually pretty
easily the
dope.
best looking airlock scene. Unfortunately though, I feel some of the tension stripped away due to Daniels having support. In the past, Ripley's normally on her own, which makes her feel her most vulnerable. Here though, we know there's a lot of people supporting her, so yeah, I just don't think it works as much. Daniels then uses the loader to send it back to the planet, and yeah, everything seems grand. We then cut to David sitting back, and I love how you can read his reaction either way. You could see it as relief that they survived, or David being gutted the xenomorph's dead. So yeah, at least they kind of play with it. But mate, I'm not getting into that pod until I've asked you to recite every conversation we've ever had. She brings up the cabin story and realizes he doesn't know what he's talking about. But too late, love. You're locked in now. You should really build these stasis pods with something on the inside that you can, like, use to open them. That seems like a design flaw, that. Very obvious feature. I love how you see her heartbeat increasing, though, as it dawns on her, but yeah, bit of an idiot, and I'm glad she's dead. David then
Fuck
will
that,
set
huh?
to entry of the gods into Valhalla, but this time he's got a full symphony. Whereas at the beginning, he said the piano sounded bad, this now plays up he's got an orchestra to play with. It's such
Jesus.
a great ending.
I'm a little
in which
rusty
he
on
coughs up
that.
a facehugger embryo, which Scott said he came up with after watching a Narcos documentary. He talked about how drug mules smuggle things through airports by swallowing condoms full of stuff that they then cough up on the other side. He's now brought this on board, and yeah, though the movie's a bit mid to me, great ending. It shows the artificiality that represents David. The facehugger's the opposite, and now we have a combination of both artificial
59
and real,
defense.
which basically sums up the covenant that David and the xenomorphs have now made. We then hear his final log where he signs off in typical Alien fashion. However, he logs off as Walter and says the crew all perished in the solar flare, except for Daniels in Tennessee. However, this highlights he's covering it up and won't ever log them going to the planet. He now has all these souls at his mercy, and we know he'll go on to make the xenomorphs. And I do hope we see him again. Obviously, Scott's original plan isn't panning out, but we do know we're going to be getting a sequel to Romulus. I do hope we see him in that, as I think that would be such a good way to bridge the franchise.
Fuck,
Maybe
dude,
he's
I hope
camped
we
out
see
on
him in the
Paradise
fucking
Planet, and
Romulus
maybe
2 or
we'll
whatever.
see that Paradise
so
is
dope.
lost, eh? That's an idea for you guys, yeah? Write that one down. As for this one, I still feel pretty much exactly how I felt upon leaving the cinema for the first time. It has its moments, but yeah, it just feels like a dumb horror movie. I think if you told me that a new director
Very
had been
dumb movie,
handed the
though.
reins, I would have probably believed you. The fact that this is Ridley Scott, though, yeah, it's just disappointing. Overall, I feel like this is a Rise of Skywalker situation where it's having to deal with the backlash from the prior film. Unfortunately, though, there's a lot of stuff they still don't explain. We've now had 2 prequel movies at this point and still don't really know about the origins of the space jockey or xenomorphs. What was all the cave paintings about? How did they end up on LV-426, you know? 2 movies, and we still don't know. Though they kind of explain what David did, though, I still have so many questions that I could probably rant away for half an hour on. I feel like we need another movie to explain all the questions.
I agree. Pretty crazy the amount of religious fucking symbolism in that shit, though. Yo, what's up, Sean? Do your thing, my man. Do your thing. I'm just kind of just having a chill streaming. Not gonna be streaming for too much longer, maybe another hour, and then I'm going to bed. Okay. And bolt tips. I want those. These for now. Any HP on this bitch? Get him. Oh, no way. He's got 3 HP and you're gonna do me like that? There we go. Oh. That. I'll take that. And I will take the tooth half. And we'll hit this motherfucker one more time. Oh. Putting that there J ski. Hook the kid up, you know? How much XP? 21k until 60 across the board. God motherfucking damn. The agility I can get. I guess I'm just gonna end the stream, boys, honestly. Probably just gonna go to bed in like half hour or something, watch a Breaking episode of Breaking Bad or something, then go to bed. Hope y'all have a good night. Squirt, Sean, Zombie, everybody that's been chilling. Mad love, mad love. Appreciate y'all. Peace.